Hello there, White Sox fans. I am still here. I still do exist. And yeah, I have actually been paying attention, watching almost every game, as exhausting as that can be when a team does not win very often. And worse than that, when they let so many leads slip away late in the game. That is just a backbreaker. And it really calls into question the idea that when you are a rebuilding team that you don't need a closer because that's just a luxury that you can afford to trade away. I kind of disagree with that to some degree. I mean, to some degree, I get it, but to some degree, also, you have to show a culture of winning, of finishing out games, even if you aren't going to be competitive in the year. It is going to be so difficult for these guys to go out there and want to put all their effort into the games to try to play and put on, improve themselves, improve the team, put on a good show for the fans, get people coming out. Because if nobody comes out, the team isn't saving money to be able to reinvest in the future. And of course, we can make all of our snide comments about how does that money really get reinvested anyway? Because yes, we are jaded as White Sox fans, and we should be. So we're going to take a look at the White Sox trade deadline plans. Who is available? Who should be available? Who do we think is going to get moved? And I'm going to go through MLB trade rumors, put a top 50 list out, and there's a number of White Sox players on there. So we're going to go off of that to start. And then we're going to go and talk about who else might be on that trading block. Before I do that, really quickly, I just want to mention that a friend of mine who owns a theater up in the Wisconsin Dells area, the Crystal Grand Music Theater, he and I are teaming up. This will be our second month. We are doing a monthly card show right on the edge of the Wisconsin Dells, a really cool venue, and we're having some fun with it. So if anybody out there is a fan of sports cards, buying, selling, all that kind of geeky fun that goes along with it, come on out. It's going to be the second Sunday of every month. We might have to move a date around here or there, depending on what's going on at the theater. But the next one is coming up just this coming Sunday, July 14, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Free to attend. And if you want a table, we're actually sold out for vendors this time around. But if you're interested in selling, having a table of your own, let me know. Just drop me a line and I can try to hook you up with that. And on a similar note, I am working with Michael on a new YouTube channel where my God, as much as I thought I liked baseball cards and sports cards, Michael Alexander it's a side job for him. He invests and opens so many cards and flips them. And it's actually been a lot of fun to see how it all works, getting cards graded, what the grades are and what those grades relate to financially. But if you're into baseball cards, sports cards, Michael is a big NBA, NFL guy. I'm not so much. I'm the baseball guy. So I kind of bring the baseball side into this channel. He runs all of the other sports. I'm no longer going to post any baseball card breaks on this channel that you're watching now. I'm going to be doing all that stuff over there on Alexander Cards and Collectibles. The link will be in the description and on the end screen at the very end of this video. But go ahead, click over there, subscribe to that channel. That's where you will see me and Michael being big old nerds for sports cards. So now let's head on over. This is MLB Trade Rumors, their list of what they consider the top 50 trade candidates at the deadline. And first person we see on here is Paul DeJong. I'm curious. To be honest with you, I haven't even read this article yet. I don't know what points they're going to make. I thought I saw Paul DeJong as a likely candidate because he really has delivered everything that the White Sox would have asked from him. He's had some very strong defense. Yes, he's made an error once or twice, but he really handles his position very well. He's a low batting average guy, but he's a pretty decent power hitter. As our new announcer, Shriffen, points out all the time, he is our team leader in the home run department, putting up some decent numbers. Again, you're not expecting a whole bunch from Paul DeJong. His contract is affordable. I don't know how much of a return he'll bring, but since he's on a one-year contract, yeah, I'd say he's very likely to be moved, or at least shopped. I don't think that the White Sox would hold out for too much to be able to move him, but maybe we'll get something of a lottery ticket, if you will. Somebody that's maybe AA, certainly not a top 100 prospect, maybe somebody that is in the lower end of a team's top 30 prospects, kind of somebody in that range. Really, honestly, I've liked having him on the team. If he sticks with the White Sox for this year, I'm okay with that. However, obviously, the White Sox are going to have to make room sooner than later for Colson Montgomery. Looking forward to seeing him play in the Futures game for the All-Star weekend. But Colson Montgomery, I like that the White Sox are taking their time bringing him up, but I still do think that he will find his way onto the team. Maybe just a September call-up, but maybe he'll get a little bit extra time. Lenyn Sosa, by the way, let's talk about this. he's a decent hitter all of a sudden. He was a guy last year who had the lightning strike moment of, okay, if he makes contact, the ball goes 420 or so feet, but he's not a guy that really does much else. This year, after having extra time in the minor leagues, he has come back with a really good eye. He's having longer at bats. He's taking more pitches. He's working the count in ways that I didn't think he was ever going to be able to do. So pretty impressed with Lenyn Sosa. Yoan Moncada is supposed to come back fairly soon. If DeJong gets traded, maybe Sosa takes some of those middle infield reps while Moncada is manning third base. Tommy Pham. Okay, I assume Tommy Pham will be on this list. For a small window, he's maybe my favorite White Sox player to watch because, again, professional hitter, a guy that just gets it on a lot of ways. I also wouldn't be opposed. I don't know if he really fits, but if the White Sox found a way to extend him at a reasonable rate, his numbers have not been great. Let me just take a quick look. What are his? He's batting 259 on base plus slugging in the upper 600s. That's actually a lot worse than I was expecting. It does say here that he had a hot start, but has faded. He obviously had an injury as well, and I feel like he's kind of getting back up to playing speed since coming back off the injured list. I don't think the White Sox will get very much for him. I hope Tommy Pham gets a chance to play some meaningful games this late summer into fall. John Brebbia, number 19, ranking him kind of high. Brebbia has had his moments. I'd say mostly he's been a little bit disappointing to me. That said, man, it's just the White Sox have so many of these C minus level players, which is maybe insulting. Brebbia, I would put into that category too, though. I can't imagine the White Sox would get much of anything for him. But yeah, if you can trade him, trade him. So as we see here, Brebbia is on a 1 year, $5.5 million deal with a mutual option. Mutual options never get exercised. That's actually the next thing written here. Mutual options are almost never exercised. So he'll be treated as a pure rental and a perhaps deceptively attractive one. I guess if you're into beards, he's deceptively attractive. No, this little write-up mentions that he's been very outstanding since the beginning of June after a terrible May. I don't think the White Sox will get very much for him. And if they move him, I'm okay with that completely, knowing that he's a rental, whatever. Moving on. Michael Kopech. Here's the interesting case. I would love to see Michael Kopech moved. Yeah, closer with a 5.31 ERA is not exactly quintessential trade candidate. So he had something amazing happen that he did, and give him all credit for it. He pitched an immaculate inning a couple of days ago. Something that I don't think I've ever seen live in my life. And I don't mean in person, but just like on TV live as it's happening, not knowing that it was going to happen. Hopefully that's the kind of positive press that could show teams that, hey, this guy, his numbers right now and last year have been subpar at best, but he's a guy that has a ceiling. He could potentially be dominant. I've seen him be dominant. I went to a game last year that he was the starting pitcher of. He pitched outstanding. It was maybe his last really good start of the year. And I saw him pitch in person in Milwaukee this year. He had moments of dominance and then moments of looking lost out there. Kopech's ceiling with the White Sox is what we're seeing right now. I think he's a great change of scenery candidate that somebody else who is not the White Sox might be able to unlock something in him, because I know he's got the tools, but man, oh man, his efficiency is terrible. He gets into deep at bat after deep at bat because he can't locate routinely. People are able to work the count against him very commonly. Before you know it, he's thrown 30 innings and he's still got through the inning, only allowing 2 base runners. But that leads to then him having to come back out and be less effective because he's more tired. I do think that there's some blame on Pedro Griffin's use of him at the beginning of the year. Pedro ran him out there to throw 2 innings at a time, most of the time, it felt like. And maybe that wasn't the best way to do things. Michael Kopech, we'll take a look at what his salary is on the year fairly soon. I think his time with the White Sox is coming to an end. I wish him the best. And I really hope Chris Getz is able to get a nice return for him. Again, I don't think we're talking about elite level prospects coming back, but maybe a couple of really decent guys coming back. It is so interesting that the White Sox picked him up as part of a rebuild years ago, and now maybe he can help with the next version of a rebuild. Just taking a quick look, he is ARB eligible next year, so he wouldn't be a pure rental for another team. And that, again, is going to really help with the return that the White Sox get for Michael Kopech. He's only making $3 million this year, which for somebody who could be maybe not your lockdown closer, but maybe this year could be your 8th inning, 7th inning bridge guy. And again, with more coaching, more development, he could be very locked down, and he could take over as a team's closer next year, perhaps, if things go perfectly. So I would expect teams to actually have to give up some decent prospects to get Michael Kopech. And again, as I referenced, he was part of the last rebuild. Yes, I'm sure most of you already know this, but he is how the White Sox got Yoan Moncada and himself in the Crochet trade back in 2016. Moving up the list to number 12, Luis. This is probably the one time I can't really think, other than young prospects like a Drew Thorpe, some of these guys that are just getting their first taste of big league action. Outside of those guys, I don't think anybody on this team is untradeable. I think Luis is the one exception to that. I really do want to keep Luis around for next year, because the White Sox could potentially be competitive next year. They tore down so much already, but we've already seen some exciting youngsters come up that give us a reason to be somewhat excited about the team. And if you have any inkling of trying to sell tickets, trying to get people to come out and save some money to be able to reinvest in the team, you have to keep Luis Robert on the team. After a slow start and then an injury, he has come back and he has done very well. They're saying he caught fire at the plate recently. I don't think he's caught fire. I'd love to see a bit more consistency out of him, but he is running into the occasional long ball more frequently. Very happy to see that. He's getting paid $12.5 million this year, $15 million next year, and then the White Sox hold 2 club options for him, $20 million apiece each of the following 2 years. So there's a lot of team control, and you would really hope that the White Sox would be in contention within that window of 4 more years. I really, really have to assume, and I know people might think, well, I'm going to say this about somebody else coming up, to trade him while he's healthy and doing well, because he's a frequent injury risk. I really still would hold on to Luis. You might disagree with me, and if you do, let me know. Oh, Erick Fedde, they put at number 6. I think they're listing this as most likely to be traded. I disagree. I would not trade Erick Fedde. Let's take a quick look. I think the White Sox have him on a 2-year contract. Yep, taking a quick look at the contract, the White Sox have him on $7.5 million this year and next year. So the White Sox do not need to trade Erick Fedde. Obviously, if somebody comes forward with a huge offer, then you're going to listen. You're going to take that call, and you might move him. But I don't think it's going to result in people giving him a huge offer. His ERA on the year right now, 2.99. He's 7-3 on a team that can't win games. He has a record of 7-3. That's exceptional. 19 starts, 111 innings pitched. He has done so well, and I would love for him to stay with the team, because I really want the White Sox to be in the thick of things next year. We're at the stage in the season where we're in basically an extended spring training to figure out what we're going to do next year. And that's why we've been able to give longer looks at some of these young arms that have, I think, been impressive. Jonathan Cannon, Drew Thorpe, Nick Nastrini among them. The White Sox obviously still need to do some work in free agency to fill some holes and to build up the team better. But I would love to see Erick Fedde stick with the team and be a front of the rotation type arm next year with the White Sox at a bargain price. As I mentioned, if a huge offer comes along, the White Sox have to consider it. An offer would need to come along that would put another young arm into our rotation now to start developing that guy to be ready to be an opening day type member of the rotation next year. Short of that, I don't want to see Erick Fedde moved. And then we go up to number 2, which is Garrett Crochet. What can you say about Garrett Crochet? He has been outstanding. All-star this year, very deservedly so, in the argument to be the all-star starter. I would absolutely move Garrett Crochet this year. It's a bummer to say that, because it's been so fun watching him. He's been such an exceptional bright spot on this team that doesn't have a lot of bright spots. And just to see him be able to make that transition from an elite closer to going through a lot of injuries. He went through injuries in college, which is why the White Sox were even able to draft him. He fell in the draft because he was dealing with injuries, even prior to being a professional ball player. First off, I have to give some amount of credit that apparently Crochet was approached about signing a long-term extension, which just is not something, especially with pitchers at the White Sox front office, has done very much. You could absolutely be dubious saying, well, did they really give him a proper offer, or was it just a conversation to look good in the press? Whatever the case, the White Sox usually don't do that at all. So I do like that the White Sox made some effort to discuss at least a longer term extension. How honest and how in earnest that conversation really went, we will never know, but it's a good start. Crochet didn't have interest in signing a long-term extension. So that makes it much easier to say, okay, well, we're going to move you. And I think from a get value for the guy, well, we can move. His value is never going to be higher than it is right now, because he's been pitching exceptionally and he's healthy. And I do not see Crochet having long-term health. I hate to say it. The chances of somebody who has had Tommy John surgery once needing it a second time is a very high likelihood. And the fact that he had to have it when he was in his early 20s means his longevity is not going to be there. I hope I'm wrong. I wish him nothing but the best. But the odds are this guy is going to deal with some other season-ending injuries in the near horizon. So I would love for the White Sox to get some big value for him right now. And I cannot imagine what kind of a return the White Sox could possibly get for moving Garrett Crochet right now. It's also interesting that any team acquiring him, in addition to worrying about his long-term health, they're not going to know how much he's going to be able to help them this year. A lot has been said, and rightfully so, about the fact that he is already at his high water mark for most innings pitched in a season. He's actually pitched more this year. Oh, right here. Here's the line I was looking for. Crochet has already thrown more innings in 2024 than he did in his entire career prior to the current season. And let's take a look at what those numbers exactly are. So his entire career, he has thrown a total of 178 innings, of which 105 were this year. His previous years, last year, just 12 and 2/3, then missed a year with Tommy John injury. The year before that, threw 54 innings. Before that, a cup of coffee, 6 innings pitched. He played in the postseason as well. And taking a quick look at what his team control is, he is in his first year of arbitration right now, making $800,000, and then he will be eligible in 2025 and 2026. He's going to get a huge raise after this year. So, of course, moving him is not about saving money, but it's about getting something for him while we can. And I'm really curious what that extension offer looked like, or at least that conversation. I don't know. I don't think there was ever an official offer, but the fact that the White Sox technically have team control over him for the next 2 years really shows that the White Sox are nervous about moving him while we can. Taking just a really quick look at the roster as it stands and the budgetary concerns. I want to zoom in on this. Yoan is in what's going to end up being the final season as a White Sox. He's making $24.8 million this year. But yeah, there's no way that the White Sox pick up a club option. Instead, they'll be giving him $5 million as a buyout. I wouldn't even mind seeing him come back on a very, very low deal. But I think we know what kind of a player he is right now. He's a very plus defender at third base. And when he's healthy and in the flow, he can be a game changer with his bat as well. But those times are so few and far between. It's really unfortunate that he's never hit that full potential. Injuries often getting in the way. Andrew Benintendi, the White Sox have him for another 4 years, actually another 3 years after this year. You can't say anything other than that he's been a disappointment. The contract makes him unmovable at this point. He's contributed by all means, but definitely not worth $17.1 million per year. Eloy, 13.8 this year and a $3 million buyout on his option next year. I think the White Sox pick it up. He actually has an option for 2026 as well. Eloy Jimenez is a very interesting case. He's a guy, as we know, who can be a very solid hitter, guy with power. Last year, he was hitting in the 290s for most of the year. I don't know if he ended up at that high by the end of the year, but he's a guy that can bring average and power Obviously, no love for him on defense, and he's an injury concern. For a guy that could be a star caliber player and sometimes has shown it, $13.8 million is not that expensive, and there's technically team control for him for 2 more years. Is another competitive team going to see Eloy as a guy that they might want to target? And if so, what would it really take for the White Sox to move him? He's a name that really has not been talked about too much when it comes to possible White Sox trade candidates. Nicky Lopez has been awesome. The fact that he's swinging the bat now is wild, because who would have expected that? He's a guy that you expect to be batting at about 200 even, but have really nice defense, which is, what Getz was going for. Have strong defense up the middle as we have some young pitchers provide that kind of support. And Nicky has delivered. And in recent weeks, he has been swinging the bat way better too. I don't know what happened, but he's been a lot of fun to have on the team. He is eligible for next year as well. So I completely anticipate that the White Sox will hold on to him. I don't think there'll be all that much desire for other teams to trade for him anyway. No offense to him. But I think it's just likely that he'll stick with the White Sox. And I would love to see the White Sox pick him up in arbitration for the next year as well, tendering him a contract, basically. Andrew Vaughn and Michael Kopech coming into the season, I thought this is the make or break year to see what we have in these players. Or is it time to move on from them? And Andrew Vaughn, for the first month at least, I was convinced that we are done with Andrew Vaughn. We're done trying it. He just was not putting it together. However, in the last couple of months, he's put it together. He's a guy that I like to see coming up to bat. He still strikes out a little more than I'd like to see. He's never looked so good in the field. He has been outstanding as a defensive first baseman out there. And now in the last couple of months, he's swinging the bat much better. If nothing else, I'd be very happy to see the White Sox tender him a contract. We've got him under team control for 2 more years. So yeah, let's just keep rolling with Vaughn and see what we get. One last thing I wanted to do. By the way, Korey Lee. Korey Lee's name has not come up yet, and I just want to shout him out. I just want to acknowledge how much damn fun it is to watch him play. He's definitely the future of the position. I'm a big Korey Lee fan. He's probably my favorite player right now. That's a good question for anybody still watching. Who is your favorite White Sox? I would totally understand if it was a Crochet or Luis, but is anybody else popped up as somebody that you really enjoy watching? Last thing I wanted to look at right now, the White Sox have a win percentage of .284, which would put the White Sox in line for 46 wins on the year, 116 losses, which makes me wonder what is the worst record of all time. Now, going back to the original 14 years of baseball, 1886 to 1900, 134 losses and just 20 wins, a .13 win percentage, which, by the way, the White Sox at one point, maybe a month or so, maybe even more into the season, they had a winning percentage of 120. So they actually would have been worse. Fortunately, they've gotten, I don't want to say better. How about less bad? But yeah, a win percentage of, what did I say, 284? But yeah, a win percentage of 284 would put them between the Louisville Colonels and the Louisville Colonels. Wow, they were a bad team in the mid 1890s, but in the quote unquote modern era. I love that the modern era starts in 1901. Let's take a look at win percentage. By measure of win percentage, it would be the second worst year in baseball history, tied with the 1935 Boston Braves, who they played fewer games overall, but they had a record of 38 and 115. That's the exact win percentage the current White Sox have. The only team worse, the Philadelphia Athletics in 1916, with a .235 win percentage. This is miserable. Just to take a quick scan, this top, or I guess it would be bottom 20 or 25 worst seasons in history, White Sox are not on there anywhere. So there's a silver lining. Will the White Sox end up on this list? The 2018 Orioles were on it, the 2019 Tigers. So there are some recent teams on here. 2003 Tigers as well. Yeah, let's take a look at by franchise. Yeah, Tigers on there twice. The Philadelphia A's on there 3 times. And then the Philadelphia Phillies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Yikes. Philly fans have dealt with some rough baseball. In addition to being the second worst win percentage of all time, clearly put the 2024 White Sox at the worst showing in team history. Let's see who they would be competing against, what they would need to do to avoid that. They need to pick up the pace to win 32.5% of their games, to beat the 1932 Chicago White Sox. To take a quick look at who in the world the 1932 Chicago White Sox were, first off, look at that logo. That's like early days of Microsoft Paint. I don't remember that logo at all. I mean, obviously I wasn't alive in 1932, but we've seen most of the White Sox logos repurposed and used over and over again. That's a logo that did not stand the test of time. Luke Appling, a future Hall of Famer, was on this team. Okay, Benny Tate, Mel Simmons, Ted Lyons. He's a legendary White Sox player. Red Faber. There's some legends, some real legends. Ed Walsh. Wait a minute. I am somewhat astonished that a team with that many legendary players on it was that bad. Sad Sam Jones was one of the pitchers. I guess that's fitting. So let's take a quick look. I mean, Luke Appling, that was in the middle of his all-star seasons, and he batted .303 that year. All right, so he wasn't the problem. Ted Lyons, he was an all-star the following year. Okay, Red Faber, who, again, just one of the greatest pitchers in White Sox history, that was his final year. So he was definitely over the hill at that point. Well, that just shows you that a team with a couple of good players doesn't make it very far. It's not like the NBA where you really just need 3 good players and then everybody else can coast. You need to have a complete team in baseball. It's one of the things that is great about baseball. Anyway, thanks for sticking it out with me as we looked at some of the White Sox trade candidates. I guess I'll ask this. Who do you really want to see stick with the team? And who do you really want to make sure you see goes before the trade deadline? As always, we will be doing a live trade deadline countdown. The last hour and a half usually is what I do. It's going to be an active trade deadline for sure, especially for the White Sox. This year, it is on July 30th. So don't forget to tune in, subscribe, set the bell onto this YouTube channel, and we'll see what happens together as the White Sox try to figure out what 2025 is going to look like. Thanks for watching Play Ball, and for the love of God, please go Sox. Avoid being one of the worst teams in baseball history. I actually think the team is better than that level. I mean, that's a low, low bar, but I think they're better than that. They just got to close out the games. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.